family. I want to talk to you about the 60-second gene key today, the gene key that is transiting, so that we have really deep access to this wisdom now within us. And it's playing out in your life in some way. And so you're being invited into a discovery, an exploration into what it is to begin to embody this language of light. And the language of light, the shadow of which is the intellect. And so the intellect is all of the things that have been programmed into our mind, the ways that we have been able to navigate this reality through what we've been taught by an educational system and by our parents. You know, when we are born, we are totally connected to this language of light. There is an essence, an energy that moves through us that is still connected to source consciousness, that is connected to our telepathy, our intuition, and this inner knowing that we are source embodied. And what happens as we begin to learn how to navigate and narrate this construct is we are given a language with which to become separate, essentially. We are inundated with facts through our educational system that are teaching us ways to have knowledge of what has already been constructed so that we can experience ourselves as a separate being, able to travel through this experience of essentially a separate self. And what happens with intellect, once we have been programmed with all of this knowledge, is we begin to believe that's who we are. We begin to associate ourselves with the language that has been constructed into a separate self so that we can navigate and interact with all these perceived others. So if we think of intellect as we mature, we become these separate humans that then hold a perspective or a worldview lens from which we see ourselves. And we start to identify with ourselves as the language itself, rather than letting the energy behind the language actually begin to return us to our point of original origin. This is known as the codon ring of no return. And the reason that we're the codon ring of no return is because once we start to unpack all that we've learned and essentially unlearn it, then there's no returning back to who we constructed ourselves as a false identity. We can't go back to that. So we can't return to quote unquote normal. And so intellect in the shadow state, in the lower frequencies, is that we believe that who we are is who we've been taught that we are through the reflection of other. Through the knowing of facts, which is the dilemma of this gene key, we get all this information that we then take as truth, that we then take as fact and apply it to self so that we can create a construct of who we are and our place in this human existence. And so when we begin to grasp and attach onto that identity, then we'll defend it at all costs. we will use language in an effort to be seen, essentially. So we will use language when we're in conversations with other people in order for them to understand who we are. But it's coming from a place that's been essentially conditioned and downloaded in through the facts that we've learned. And so we'll begin to espouse these facts to people. We'll use our intellect as that definition in order to find some essence of self. But it's not true because it has been conditioned in, because it has been downloaded as a false identification with who we think that we are. And so what happens when we start to awaken to this fact is that we begin to dissolve and disintegrate. We begin to become humbled by the knowing that what we are protecting as an identified self is really not true for us. In the effort to be known, we will build up this identification with that which we know through science, through government, through education, through medicine. Just like every single system is teaching us, and we are downloading these facts about how things work. And it is our intellect that causes all of our energy of knowing and intuition and connection to the whole. All of that energy becomes locked in the head, and it becomes distortion. It creates separation from that which we actually are at the heart of our true essence. And so if you can picture somebody who is an intellectual and how they will speak a language that actually is quite empty, that there's no life behind it, that intellect is actually almost, it's deadly because there's no heart there. It's all coming from the mind that is constructing an illusion, essentially. And when words are spoken from that place, they don't actually penetrate because there's no life behind them. The intellect is lifeless because it's not connected to the heart and the inner knowing. It's an energy that we've taken on that has no aliveness to it. And so through the shadow of intellect, we believe we know, and then we use our language to disseminate our knowing, and it creates more separateness because there's no intimacy there. There's no real grounding to the truth of who we are. And so the gift of the shadow is precision. And it's through precision that we begin to allow in new knowing. But it's not a knowing that has been taught to us. It's an inner knowing that begins to arise. It's something that actually starts to come alive within us. And it's so radically new because it is essentially this birthing of the source of our being that is beginning to come online. It is beginning to open up a new way of knowing that is actually not coming from the intellect. It's coming from source consciousness that is connected to your heart and connected to the solar plexus, which is what I would call the true brain. And it's connected to the womb, where we birth through the mystery of us actually being connected to our creator consciousness. And what happens then is your words begin to come out with such precision and such economy that they land in a completely different way, because there is this almost innate source energy that is arising behind the words. At the lower frequencies, the lifeless words, they don't really resonate. They don't penetrate. They don't feel in alignment somehow. But until you start stepping into the gift, you really can't pinpoint why something doesn't land. But when you start to connect with the intuitive knowing of the own precision of the truth that is being born within you, there's a very different resonance to your words. There's a pausing in between to actually receive the energy that lies between the words. So words at a lower level are like, they contain the energy of manipulation, because there's something that was falsely seeded in you, and so they don't really grow. It's almost like a lifeless seed that can't germinate, that can't sprout, where when our intuition, when our inner knowing starts to arise, the life within that language is vastly transformed. Then language no longer is trying to manipulate, but rather it's trying to create a reunion, so that the words that then come forth are filled with the frequency and the vibration of coming back into union with that which is source, that which is love. And those words have such a precision to them. It's like I see an archer pulling back the arrow. And when that arrow is let go, it moves with such precision and it penetrates right to the heart of the matter. And those words, regardless actually of what is being said, they open the heart of others, because on a conscious or a subconscious level, depending on where the other person is, it is felt. Even if they can't translate it with the mind, is the frequency behind the words that lands so deeply that it plants a seed in another. This kind of language is the language of light, because it illuminates the truth within another. Light language, which is a language that many people are receiving right now, is the language of original source consciousness. It is sharp like a diamond. It cuts through the extraneous energies that come when there's too many words. Feel into when somebody is trying to convince you of something, how a lot of words are being used, and yet behind the words, it just feels confusing. There's a confusion to those words that doesn't allow you to come into clarity. Whereas precision that arises from the heart of knowing, even if it's not clear in your mind, it feels clear in your body. It actually awakens a deeper part of yourself that allows for intelligence that is not of the mind to begin to be illuminated because it's so clear. You know, your words, everything becomes impeccable when you're speaking from that language. Impeccability is economy. It's only speaking that which is arising from that creative consciousness. And those words are always in service to unifying the entire field, unifying each other, unifying consciousness. And the only way that precision and impeccability can come online is when there's embodied knowing. When you can feel the resonance and the pulsing in every single cell. When epiphanies arise, when things that have not been known intellectually begin to arise from this place of divine intelligence. You know, intellect and intelligence. The difference is that intellect is coming from the mind. Intelligence is coming from embodied knowing. You know, we have two massive systems in our culture called science and religion that have really served to shape how we interact in this world. Science is coming from a place that thinks that it has solved the mysteries. And because it thinks that it has solved the mysteries, it in essence has closed the door to an unfolding journey that is actually endless, that is eternal, that allows us to keep moving with that exploration, knowing that there's specific moments when we will have an epiphany and an understanding of reality from the higher states that opens us up to a deeper embodied knowing. But if science thinks that has already solved the problem, and then we agree to that collective belief, then it kind of shuts the door to allowing a more expansive state of inner standing. And religion, which gives you all the rules that you need to abide by to know God. What that does is place God outside of self. It creates all of the shame and blame. It creates the sense of inadequacy, of not doing it right. But to know God through wisdom is to meet God inside yourself and to allow that seed to begin to teach you your own inner relationship with that which is your source. We can only know God if we meet God from within. That's the only way we can know that that is actually true. It can never come from intellect. It can only come from wisdom, from deep inner knowing, from meeting the divine within yourself. That's immaculate. And when those kind of truths hit you, it's more real than anything that you have ever been taught, and you feel the frequency shift in your body. you then have a direct relationship with that sense of your source that you have actually been born from. It is pristine. It is that diamond clarity, because you now have that interconnection, communication with God, with source consciousness, with your original light language. And so from that place, language becomes impeccable. Language actually is mathematics. It's numbers and equations that make up the geometries of this reality. And impeccability is revealing those geometries through your body, your technology of your body that is born of that mathematic geometry, and then becoming the translator of light, and then allowing that translation to come through as language that you can then share. But it's coming from that precise, impeccable place of full, embodied, divine knowing. It's radically different, and it's felt. And to begin to feel into that, it's really important, it's imperative to begin feeling the vibration of the words that you speak. If you watch, observe two people in conversation, you can actually see two people, oftentimes both speaking at the same time. So they're both putting out the energy of their knowing, of their intellect, but nobody is actually receiving. It's like they're bouncing off each other and nobody is hearing the other, because it's coming from this place of intellect, of this almost like this protective layer of defense of this is me and my mask, this is you and your mask, and there's two false identities trying to connect, but they can't connect because there's no openness, there's no intimacy. Language, when it's precise and impeccable, is intimate. One precise word that is truly received and heard, it opens up worlds within. And then through the heart, you can use your language of light to then respond and create more expansive openings of light. There is a union that happens, an intimacy that happens where one is penetrating the other, and then the other is receiving the other. It's sensual, it's intimate, it's this seeing into one another and then reflecting back the self. It's exquisite. And it's impeccable because there is no interference. It's purity. So as you move through this exquisite key that wants to open up within you at this time, notice and slow down to actually receive the energy behind the words that you speak, and then the energy behind the words that are spoken to you, and begin to decipher through the intonations, through the energy behind the words, and actually feel, instead of just using your ears, feel every word, and you will know truth, because it will land and open up worlds inside of you. This exquisite key is known as like the first sun. And when I say sun, I mean S-U-N, sun. It is the original light. It is the sun within us. It is the central sun. It is illuminated language. And it often requires very little words. And it's the radiance behind the word that allows you to completely receive another and then allow yourself to completely be received. And this is the ring of no return, because once you open up this part of you, there's no going back to the normalcy of who you were before. You've opened up an entirely new stargate within you to receive the light of language, which is in fact constructing this entire reality. And those that hold this key or deeply resonate with this key, these are the leaders of New Earth. It is intimately connected in the ring of no return with the 31st gene key, whose shadow is arrogance. So the arrogance behind the language is the thinking of that you know something that you haven't really embodied, but is just something that has been taught to you, that you've taken on as your identity. It's the arrogance, but it leads to the gift of leadership. So the ones who know how to speak with precision are the leaders of New Earth, because they can be impeccable in the way that they lead with their language and penetrate to create new structures through the vibration of their voice. The sound, the vibration, the mathematics of geometry, and being able to translate geometry into reality by the words that you choose to speak. So watch and feel if you're manipulating language as part of an identification, and choose your words with economy. Learn the language of nature. Feel how loud silence is. Feel how the trees crackle as they grow. Feel the language of how the leaves and the flowers, they are actually receiving the light of the sun. That consciousness is available to you. And the more still and the more quiet that you are, the more receptive you become to the language of Earth, the mother, our mother, that which birthed us. And then you can hear the language of Gaia. And as you begin to ascend, as your language of light, because light is, it rises and it expands. And then you receive the language of the cosmos or the cosmic mother. And this language is impeccable. It's pristine. It's light. So this key is so beautiful. And I just wanted to say as well, like the language of light is something that's coming through for a lot of people right now, this resonance that we are able to speak vibrations that don't have meaning that we've assigned to words, you know, like the light language of resonance. Imakri inanakri unya tarada Uriana kimada kri imala kutita tariana. Fri imana koruputyak a rina na kri akem inaki. ki ankri intiana. Your mind can't receive that. But you can receive the energy and the vibration that is behind it. That is pristine, that is loving, and that is unifying. So lastly, I just want to share with you the acupuncture portal that's on your body that can help activate this key. It's on the spleen channel, the earth channel, and it is just below your armpit, down. You can feel over through your chest, and it's in the 6th intercostal space. So it's right about here. Okay. And it's known as the great enveloping, right? Which I think of as the great embrace. It's the great embracing of actually the totality of all that you are. And it's the perfect point to when you embrace yourself, your palms are going to land right where that point is. So this great embrace of the cosmic mother and the earth mother that will show you the language of your light, of your essence, of your illumination, of your brilliance. And then breathe into that and receive and sit in nature and hold yourself in that way, feeling the great embrace and allowing the language of light to truly penetrate you, to really, really receive it, take it in. And it's directly connected to your breath. How much you can receive is connected to how deeply you can inhale. How much you can give is directly related to how you exhale, surrender, and let go. And let the vibrational frequencies that want to arise from here, from your solar plexus and from your womb, what wants to rise up and be spoken. That is impeccability. And it will change the way that you are perceived by others. They will not fully comprehend how they feel in your aura. There'll be a remembering and an awakening, and they will be paying attention, hanging on your every word, because they will feel the shift in their bodies and the openings of the portals of realization of their self in union, in intimacy with you. So this is the language of light, from intellect to precision to impeccability. Thank you for listening and receiving this precision and this impeccable way of being. It will open up vast, infinite amounts of inner knowing and wisdom to you. You will be able to feel the essence of everyone around you, knowing exactly the words that need to arise so that you can penetrate, so that you can unify in the intimacy of language with light and conceive of something entirely brand new. Thank you, Gaia Guardians. May you be blessed with the light and radiance of your own essence. Aloha.